I'm Griffin, 26 years old, and last month I came home to find every lock changed. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. We changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. I stared at those words, my hands shaking despite the summer heat. How funny how brave they think they are. Ha ha, I replied, trying to mask my panic. 2 days later, an email appeared in my inbox from their lawyer. We have a problem. Call immediately. Before I continue, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever dealt with family drama. I grew up in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Boston with my controlling mother Elizabeth and passive father Richard. From the moment I could understand words, my parents made it clear they had my life planned out. I would follow in my father's footsteps and become an accountant, work at a prestigious firm, marry someone from a good family, and live the life they deemed successful. My childhood was a carefully orchestrated performance. Every grade below an A resulted in hours of additional study. Every friendship was scrutinized for appropriate influence. Every extracurricular activity was evaluated for its impact on college applications. My mother controlled every aspect of my life with meticulous precision, while my father stood silently by, occasionally offering a sympathetic glance, but never contradicting her. Your father built a good life for us with accounting, my mother would say whenever I showed interest in anything creative. It's stable, respectable, and secure. Why would you want anything else? By high school, I had learned to keep my head down and meet their expectations. I joined the debate team instead of the art club. I took extra math classes instead of creative writing. I dated girls my mother approved of, with parents she knew from community functions. When college application time came, I wasn't surprised when my mother arranged campus tours exclusively at schools with strong business programs. I still remember standing in the art building at Boston University during one tour, staring longingly at student projects displayed in the hallway while my mother tugged at my arm. We're going to be late for the business school presentation, she said, pulling me away. This isn't why we're here. I attended my father's alma mater and majored in business administration with a focus on accounting, just as planned. But during my sophomore year, I took a graphic design elective to fulfill an arts requirement. Something awakened in me during that class. For the first time, I felt genuine excitement about my work. My professor noticed my talent and encouraged me to take more design courses. I kept these classes secret from my parents, scheduling them during times when they thought I was at accounting society meetings or study groups. I built a small portfolio of design work, hidden away on my laptop where my mother wouldn't find it during her visits. After graduation, I dutifully accepted a position at an accounting firm where my father had connections. I moved into my own apartment, finally experiencing a small taste of independence. But the work made me miserable. I would sit in my cubicle staring at spreadsheets, feeling my soul slowly dying with each passing hour. Then I met Sophia at a coffee shop where I would escape during lunch breaks to work on secret design projects. She was everything my mother would disapprove of. A free-spirited artist with brightly colored hair who taught art to elementary school children. She noticed my design work and complimented it genuinely. You have real talent, she said. Why are you working as an accountant? No one had ever asked me that question so directly before. Over the following weeks, our relationship blossomed, and for the first time, I found myself imagining a different future than the one my parents had planned. When I finally introduced Sophia to my parents during a tense dinner, my mother's disapproval was immediate and obvious. What exactly does your family do? She asked Sophia, within minutes of meeting her. My mom's a nurse, and my dad's a high school teacher, Sophia answered proudly. My mother's thin smile didn't reach her eyes. How nice. Later that night, my father pulled me aside. Son, I know you think you're in love, but be careful about throwing away opportunities. Not everyone understands the importance of building a secure future. The breaking point came 6 months later. After countless late nights working on my portfolio while maintaining my accounting job, I received a freelance design opportunity that excited me more than anything in years. When I mentioned possibly quitting my accounting job to pursue design full-time, my mother exploded. This is that girl's influence, she shouted during Sunday dinner. She's filling your head with impractical nonsense. Do you have any idea How many people would kill for your position? I have N19. It's my life, I finally said, standing up to her, for perhaps the first time. And I'm miserable as an accountant. Then be miserable, she replied coldly. At least you'll be miserable with a paycheck and health insurance. The next week, I quit my accounting job and accepted a position at a small design agency. My parents immediately cut financial support they had been providing to help with my student loans. They made it clear they considered this decision a personal betrayal of everything they had invested in me. Sophia was incredibly supportive as I navigated this transition. Our relationship grew stronger as I began finding my authentic voice. My work at the agency flourished, and I started building a client list and reputation. For about a year, everything seemed to be falling into place despite my parents' constant passive-aggressive comments at family gatherings about my phase and when I would return to a real career. Then the economy took a downturn. The small agency where I worked lost several major clients and had to downsize. As the newest designer, I was the first to be let go. Suddenly, I was unemployed with a portfolio of work but limited savings. The financial stress created tension between Sophia and me. We began arguing about money, future plans, and security. The same concerns my parents had raised now became points of contention in our relationship. After 3 months of struggle, Sophia and I mutually decided to end our relationship, both recognizing that the timing wasn't right for us. With my apartment lease ending and my savings nearly depleted, I faced a difficult decision. At 26, I would have to move back home temporarily until I could secure another design position. When I called my mother to ask if I could move back for a few months, her response was cool but accepting. "Of course you can come home," she said. "Family is always there when these experiments don't work out." I moved back to my childhood bedroom with clear conditions from my parents. I would search for jobs daily, contribute to household expenses from my unemployment benefits, and follow their house rules. Initially, the arrangement was awkward but manageable. I spent my days applying for design positions and building my freelance portfolio. But as weeks passed, my mother began monitoring my activities with increasing scrutiny. She would question why I was applying for design positions instead of returning to accounting. She would look over my shoulder as I worked on my laptop. She started leaving printouts of local accounting job listings on my bed. My father acted as messenger between us, trying to minimize direct conflict. "Your mother just wants what's best for you," he would say. "She's worried about your future." The tension grew when I received a promising interview request from a design firm in Seattle. My mother found the email when she accidentally checked my computer while I was out. "Seattle?" she confronted me when I returned. "You're planning to move across the country now? After everything we've done for you?" "It's just an interview," I replied. "But yes, I'll go wherever there's good work in my field." "Your field," she scoffed. "Your father and I didn't put you through college so you could draw pictures for a living." The arguments increased in frequency and intensity over the following weeks. Each day brought new criticism of my career choices, my independence, and my future plans. The home that was supposed to be my temporary safety net became a battleground of wills. Everything came to a head the night before the lockout. I had just finished a final interview with the Seattle company and received a job offer with a salary that exceeded my previous accounting position. The creative director had been impressed with my portfolio and offered me a role with significant creative input and growth potential. It was everything I had been working toward. I was sitting at the kitchen table when my parents came home, trying to figure out how to break the news. Part of me still hoped they might be happy for me, might finally see that this path could lead to success by anyone's definition. "I got the job in Seattle," I said as they walked in. "They're offering a great salary and benefits. I'd start in 2 weeks." My mother's face hardened instantly. "So, you've decided to throw away everything we've built for you here?" "Again, I'm not throwing anything away," I replied. "I'm building something new, something I'm actually good at." "Good at?" She laughed bitterly. "Drawing logos and pictures? My friend Janet's 7-year-old does that on her iPad." My father stepped in with his usual attempt at mediation. "What your mother means is that we're concerned about stability. Design jobs come and go, with trends. Accounting will always be needed. This isn't about stability, I said, my frustration mounting. This is about control. You've never wanted me to have my own life. How dare you, my mother erupted. After everything we've sacrificed for you, the tuition we paid, the opportunities we provided. And this is how you repay us? I never asked for any of that, I shouted back. You chose it all for me without ever asking what I wanted, what you wanted. She was practically shaking now. What about responsibility? What about gratitude? That girl Sophia filled your head with nonsense about following your passion. And look where it got you. Back in our house, living off our charity. The mention of Sophia pushed me over the edge. Leave her out of this. This isn't about her. This is about me finally doing what I'm good at, instead of living your version of my life. You're good at? My father joined in now, his voice unusually sharp. Son, you lost your job and your girlfriend. You're in debt. You think this is success? You're making another mistake you'll regret. The argument continued to escalate, voices rising until my mother delivered her ultimatum. If you take that job, don't expect any support from us. Not emotional, not financial, nothing. Fine, I said, grabbing my keys. I'll stay with Luke tonight. Maybe we all need to cool down. I drove to my best friend Luke's apartment, where he let me crash on his couch without asking too many questions. The next morning, I received a text from my mother that seemed surprisingly conciliatory. We should talk about this calmly. Come home after work, and we'll discuss options. I spent the day at a coffee shop updating my resume and preparing for the move to Seattle. I felt a mix of anxiety and excitement about the future, but also a lingering hope that maybe my parents would finally understand my perspective. When I returned home that evening, I immediately knew something was wrong. My key wouldn't turn in the front door lock. Thinking it might be stuck, I tried again, then moved to the back door. Same problem. I tried the garage door code. It had been changed. Even the basement entrance was locked with a new padlock I'd never seen before. As I stood there trying different entrances, I noticed our neighbors, the Wilsons, watching from their driveway. My embarrassment grew with each failed attempt to enter my own home. Then my phone buzzed with a text message from my mother. We changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. I read the message multiple times, unable to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. Parents don't just lock their children out without warning. I typed back with shaking hands, trying to sound braver than I felt. How funny how brave they think they are. Ha ha. Through the living room window, I could see my mother's silhouette behind the curtains, but she made no move to come to the door. I called my father repeatedly, but every call went straight to voicemail. As I stood there in disbelief, Mr. Wilson approached cautiously from next door. Everything okay, Griffin? He asked, clearly uncomfortable. Yeah, just locked out temporarily. I lied, my face burning with humiliation. Miscommunication about keys. I returned to my car, parked in the driveway, and sat there, finally allowing the tears to come. The reality of what was happening hit me all at once. My own parents had calculated this move, changed every lock, and were now ignoring my calls. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. This was premeditated. Note. Eventually, I drove back to Luke's apartment and explained the situation. They did what? Luke exclaimed, while his girlfriend Mia looked on in shock. Can they even legally do that? I don't know, I admitted. I never thought they would go this far. They might be bluffing, Mia suggested, trying to scare you into turning down the Seattle job. I barely slept that night on Luke's couch, checking my phone constantly for any message from my parents. The next morning, I drove past the house early before work hours. Both of my parents' cars were still in the driveway. I parked and tried knocking on the door, thinking maybe in the light of day they would reconsider. No response, despite the fact I could hear movement inside. It was becoming clear this wasn't a temporary tactic. They had actually locked me out of my home. Luke and Mia were incredibly generous, insisting I could stay on their couch as long as needed, despite their one-bedroom apartment being barely big enough for the two of them. I was acutely aware of how much space I was taking up in their living room and how this disrupted their privacy and routine. My immediate situation was dire. I had one change of clothes in my car, my laptop, and my wallet. Everything else, clothes, important documents, my complete design portfolio, personal mementos, was locked inside my parents' house. I did a quick financial assessment, and the picture wasn't pretty. I had about 2 weeks until my new job would start in Seattle, but my savings were limited after months of unemployment. I needed to figure out how to get to Seattle, secure an apartment there, and survive until my first paycheck, all without access to most of my possessions. My first call was to the HR department at the Seattle company. I explained that I was experiencing an unexpected housing situation and asked if there was any possibility of a salary advance to help with relocation. To my relief, they were understanding and offered a small advance that would at least cover apartment application fees and a security deposit. But practical challenges kept mounting. My birth certificate, passport, and social security card were all in my desk at my parents' house. I had been planning to use those documents for the new apartment application and employment verification. Without them, everything would be more complicated. I postponed apartment hunting in Seattle, uncertain whether I would even have enough money for a security deposit after purchasing necessities like additional clothes and toiletries. Luke, who was similar in size to me, generously lent me some professional clothes for video meetings I had scheduled with the Seattle company. The emotional turmoil was even more challenging than the practical problems. I cycled through shock, hurt, anger, and confusion dozens of times each day. How could they do this to their own son? Was there something I could have said differently? Had they been planning this all along? Every day, I would drive past the house, hoping to catch my parents outside so I could at least retrieve some of my belongings. The house always appeared closed up tight, though I occasionally saw movement behind the curtains. During my third day of displacement, I spent hours at the local library researching tenant rights. What I discovered surprised me. According to state law, even family members living in a home establish tenancy rights after 30 days. My parents couldn't legally lock me out without a formal eviction process, regardless of whose name was on the deed. Luke's girlfriend Mia mentioned that her cousin Amanda worked as a paralegal and might have some advice. Amanda confirmed what my research had indicated. The lockout was an illegal self-help eviction, and I likely had grounds for legal action if I wanted to pursue it. I drafted a formal email to my parents, requesting access to retrieve my belongings, and explaining that I was aware of my rights as a tenant. I sent it to both their personal and work email addresses. Days passed with complete silence. I considered involving extended family members who might be able to intervene. I called my grandmother, hoping she might reason with my mother, but my mother answered my grandmother's phone. The conversation was brief and tense. "Grandma isn't available right now," my mother said coolly. "Mom, please, I need my things. My documents. My clothes. This isn't legal. What you're doing. I don't know what you're talking about," she replied before hanging up. The conversation left me wondering if my grandmother even knew what was happening. My mother had always controlled family information carefully, presenting situations in ways that made her appear reasonable. Despite knowing I had legal options, I hesitated to escalate the situation. These were my parents. Taking legal action against them felt like crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I kept hoping they would come to their senses and at least allow me to collect my belongings. As days passed, I developed a routine. Mornings were spent preparing for my new job, afternoons hunting for affordable apartments online, and evenings researching my legal options. Luke suggested I document everything, every text, email, and attempted contact in case things escalated further. I started keeping a detailed journal of the timeline and saving all communication. My anxiety about my belongings grew daily. Beyond practical items like clothes, I worried about irreplaceable things. My portfolio of original design work, a watch my grandfather had given me before he died, photographs, and mementos from college. The coffee shop near Luke's apartment became my temporary office. I spent so much time there that the staff began to recognize me, occasionally offering free refills or day-old pastries. One barista named Taylor noticed me researching tenant rights and shared that she had experienced something similar with her own family. "It gets better," she assured me. "Once you're fully independent from them, you can rebuild on your terms." Her words helped me begin reframing the situation. Maybe this forced separation, though traumatic, was the clean break I needed. Perhaps trying to maintain connections with parents who so fundamentally refused to respect my choices was holding me back. The sense of betrayal deepened as days passed with no contact from either parent. Not even my father, who had always been the more reasonable one, reached out to check if I was safe or had a place to stay. The silence spoke volumes about their priorities. Control was more important than my well-being. As my small savings dwindled further, I began considering whether I would need to borrow money from friends to make it until my first paycheck. The thought of adding financial debt to friends on top of the emotional burden I already felt was difficult to accept. I was sitting in my usual corner of the coffee shop on the second day after the lockout, updating my resume and portfolio for the new position, when my phone chimed with an email notification. The subject line immediately caught my attention: "Urgent legal matter. Immediate response required." The email was from Bradford J. Williams, Esquire of Williams and Markham, a prestigious law firm I recognized from their billboards around town. My stomach dropped as I began reading. "Dear Mr. Miller, I represent Elizabeth and Richard Miller in a matter of serious concern. It has come to our attention that prior to your departure from their residence, you removed several valuable family heirlooms, including a diamond brooch belonging to your grandmother, and damaged an antique writing desk in the process. My clients demand the immediate return of all removed items, which they value in excess of $20,000, and compensation for the damaged property. Failure to comply within 24 hours will result in legal action, including potential criminal charges for theft and destruction of property. This matter requires your immediate attention. Contact our office at the number below to discuss resolution. We have a problem. Call immediately." Bradford J. Williams, Esquire, Williams and Markham, attorneys at law. My hands began to shake so badly I could barely hold my phone. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt suddenly cold despite the warm coffee shop. I had to step outside for air, leaving my laptop unattended, something I would never normally do. Outside on the sidewalk, I dialed the number from the email with trembling fingers. A professional receptionist answered, and, after taking my name, connected me to Attorney Williams. "Mr. Miller," Williams began in a cold, professional tone, "I'm glad you've called promptly. This suggests you're taking this matter seriously." "I don't understand," I managed to say. "I haven't taken anything from my parents' house. I don't have access to the house. They changed the locks 2 days ago." "Mr. Miller," Williams continued, his voice dripping with skepticism, "my clients have provided a detailed inventory of missing items, including your grandmother's diamond brooch, valued at approximately $15, the 4.UF 000, and damage to an antique writing desk from the 1892nd. They inform me you removed these items during your last visit before leaving." "That's completely false," I said, my shock giving way to indignation. "The brooch has been in my mother's safe deposit box for years, and the writing desk was damaged months ago when my father tried to move it to clean behind it. I haven't taken anything, and I couldn't have, even if I wanted to, because they locked me out." "These are serious allegations, Mr. Miller," Williams continued, undeterred. "If we cannot resolve this amicably, my clients are prepared to file a police report for theft." "Criminal charges?" I exclaimed, drawing looks from people passing by. "For things I never took? This is insane. Playing games will only make your situation worse," Williams replied. "I suggest you consider your position carefully and call me back when you're ready to discuss returning the items." I ended the call and immediately called Luke, barely able to form coherent sentences as I explained what had happened. He left work early and met me at the coffee shop, where I showed him the email. "This is unbelievable," Luke said, reading through it again. "They're literally making things up to justify locking you out." As the initial shock wore off, I began connecting the dots. My parents weren't just trying to pressure me into giving up the Seattle job. They were constructing a false narrative where I was the villain who stole from them, rather than the victim of an illegal eviction. The realization that they would go so far as to falsely accuse me of theft was devastating. Luke and I spent the next hour cataloging the items they claimed I had taken. The diamond brooch had been placed in my mother's safe deposit box years ago, after a break-in at a neighbor's house. She had mentioned this multiple times, even making a point of telling me that it's the safest place for valuable family heirlooms. The writing desk had been damaged when my father tried to move it while vacuuming behind it. I had actually helped him try to repair one of the legs that had cracked in the process. "They're setting you up," Luke said finally. "They know they've done something illegal by locking you out, so they're creating a story where you're the criminal instead." The profound sense of betrayal I felt was unlike anything I had experienced before. Arguments and controlling behavior were one thing. Fabricating criminal accusations was something else entirely. "You need a lawyer," Luke said firmly. "This isn't something you can handle through email anymore." The thought of hiring an attorney to fight my own parents was both terrifying and financially daunting. I had barely enough money to get to Seattle and secure an apartment, let alone pay legal fees. Seeing my hesitation, Luke and Mia made an incredible offer that night. "We'll loan you enough for an initial legal consultation," Mia said. "You can pay us back when you're settled in Seattle." Their generosity brought me to tears, but it also strengthened my resolve. If my parents were willing to fabricate theft accusations against me, I needed to protect myself, regardless of the emotional cost. That night, I researched affordable legal aid options and drafted a response to William stating that all allegations were categorically false and requesting evidence of the supposed theft and damage. As I typed, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt and confusion began to harden into determination. If this was the battle my parents wanted, I would not simply roll over and accept their version of reality. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with the implications of criminal accusations. Would this affect my new job? My ability to rent an apartment? Would I actually have to defend myself against theft charges for items I had never taken? The next morning, I had a consultation with attorney Sarah Jameson, who had been recommended through a legal aid service. Her office was small but organized, and her manner was straightforward and reassuring. "Based on what you've told me," she said after hearing my story, "your parents have committed an illegal self-help eviction. It doesn't matter that they own the house or that your family, living there for over 30 days, establishes tenancy under state law." She explained that the proper procedure would have required written notice, followed by a court filing if I didn't leave voluntarily. Changing locks without notice or court approval was explicitly prohibited. "What about their claims that I stole things?" I asked. "That appears to be a retaliatory accusation," she replied. "It's unfortunately common in these situations. People realize they've acted illegally and try to create justification after the fact." We spent the next hour gathering evidence. I had mail addressed to me at the house, my driver's license with the address, and text messages from my parents that clearly acknowledged I was living there. Sarah explained that these all established my tenancy. I created a detailed inventory of all belongings still in the house with approximate values. Using social media posts and photos on my phone, we documented that certain items they claimed I had stolen had actually been in the house during times when I wasn't present. Sarah drafted a formal cease and desist letter addressing both the illegal eviction and the false accusations. The letter demanded immediate access to retrieve my belongings under supervision, as well as financial compensation for the illegal eviction and temporary housing costs. When she handed me the letter to review, I hesitated. Signing it felt like crossing a point of no return in my relationship with my parents. Was I ready for that? "Griffin," Sarah said gently, "I understand this is difficult. These are your parents. But what they're doing isn't just hurtful. It's illegal, and the false accusations could have serious consequences for your future." "I know," I sighed. "It's just hard to accept that it's come to this. Setting boundaries is necessary even with family," she said. "Sometimes, especially with family." I signed the letter with a mixture of sadness and resolve. Sarah then explained our next steps, including the possibility of court proceedings if my parents refused to comply. "We'll also file an emergency petition for retrieval of essential belongings," she added. "That would allow you to get important documents and necessities even before resolving the larger issues." I left her office, and immediately called my new employer in Seattle to explain the situation. I was worried they might rescind the offer if they knew I was involved in a legal dispute. But their response surprised me. "Take the time you need to handle this," my new boss said. "We can be flexible with your start date. Just keep us updated." Their understanding was a welcome relief amid the chaos. That afternoon, I received an unexpected call from my father's brother, Uncle James, who lived about an hour away. "Griffin, what the hell is going on?" he asked without preamble. "I just talked to your dad, and he gave me some story about you stealing from them." I explained the real situation, including the illegal lockout and the false accusations that followed. "Christ," he muttered. "I wish I could say I'm surprised. Your mother has always been controlling. Did you know something similar happened with your sister?" This caught me off guard. My older sister had moved overseas 5 years ago and rarely contacted the family. I had always assumed it was because of her busy career. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Your sister wanted to take a job in Chicago after college. Your mother threatened to stop paying her student loans if she moved. When she took the job anyway, they cut her off completely. That's why she eventually moved abroad, to get as far from their influence as possible." The revelation helped me connect dots I hadn't previously seen. My sister's limited contact, her absence at family functions, the way my mother always changed the subject when relatives asked about her. "Listen," Uncle James continued, "I know you're staying with friends, but I have a guest room if you need it, and I can loan you some money to help with the legal stuff." I accepted his offer gratefully, moving from Luke's couch to James's more private guest room the next day. James shared stories about his own experiences with my parents over the years, including times he had stood up to my mother and faced her cold shoulder for months afterward. "Your mother builds her identity around controlling the people close to her," he explained. "When someone rejects that control, she takes it as a personal attack." With James's support and Sarah's legal guidance, I felt my confidence growing. I wasn't wrong to pursue my own path. I wasn't ungrateful for wanting independence. I was simply an adult making my own choices, and my parents' response said more about them than about me. The next day, Sarah called with news. William's office contacted me. They've requested a mediation meeting instead of responding to our letter. That suggests they recognize their position isn't as strong as they initially claimed. Sarah spent the next 2 days preparing me for the mediation meeting. She coached me on remaining calm regardless of provocation, sticking to factual statements, and not allowing emotional manipulation to derail the discussion. "Your parents and their attorney will likely try to make this about your career choices, your gratitude, or your character," she warned. "Don't engage with those topics. This is about illegal eviction and false accusations, nothing else." Uncle James offered to drive me to the meeting for moral support. As we pulled up to the imposing glass building housing Williams' law offices, my stomach tightened with anxiety. The marble lobby and hushed atmosphere were clearly designed to intimidate. We were shown to a conference room where Williams was already seated alongside my parents. A neutral mediator introduced herself, and Sarah took her place beside me. Seeing my parents for the first time in weeks was jarring. My mother sat rigid and tense, while my father looked tired and somehow older than I remembered. An awkward silence filled the room until the mediator explained the process and ground rules. Williams began by presenting my parents' case, though I noticed his claims were significantly toned down from the initial email. My clients were concerned about certain valuable items they believed were missing from their home, he stated carefully. They also felt that proper notice had been given regarding the termination of their son's residency arrangement. Sarah methodically dismantled these claims, presenting the evidence we had gathered. She explained the tenant laws clearly violated by my parents' actions, showed documentation of my established residency, and addressed the false accusations with photographic evidence that contradicted their claims. As for the diamond brooch, Sarah concluded, "We have documented proof that Mrs. Miller placed this item in a safe deposit box years ago, as she has mentioned to multiple family members." My mother couldn't contain herself any longer. "This is ridiculous," she interrupted. "After everything we've done for him, he brings lawyers into a family matter? This is how you repay us, Griffin?" I maintained my composure, just as Sarah had coached me, while the mediator gently reminded my mother of the ground rules. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding eye contact with everyone. He hadn't spoken a single word since the meeting began. Sarah then presented our financial damages, costs for temporary housing, legal fees, missed work opportunities, and the expenses of replacing essential items I hadn't been able to access. After this presentation, Williams requested a private conference with my parents. As they stepped out, Sarah assured me things were proceeding well. "They're recognizing their position is untenable," she said. "Williams is likely advising them to settle rather than face a judge." While we waited, Uncle James placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. The emotional weight of confronting my parents through lawyers in a sterile conference room hit me suddenly, and I had to fight back tears. When everyone returned, Williams' tone had noticeably shifted. My clients acknowledged there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the termination of tenancy. He stated carefully, "They are willing to provide immediate access to the residence for retrieval of belongings." "And the accusations of theft and property damage?" Sarah pressed. My mother's lips tightened, but Williams responded, "My clients concede that in the heat of emotion, certain concerns may have been overstated." "That's not good enough," Sarah replied firmly. "These were serious accusations that could have resulted in criminal charges. We need a formal retraction." After further negotiation, we reached an agreement. I would be granted supervised access to retrieve all my belongings the following day. My parents would provide financial compensation covering my expenses plus additional damages. Most importantly, they would provide a written retraction of all accusations of theft and property damage. As the lawyers worked out the details, the mediator suggested my parents and I might want a moment alone. When the others stepped out, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. "How could you do this to us?" my mother finally asked, her voice quivering with what sounded like genuine hurt. "Bringing lawyers, making demands. We're your parents. This was the result of your choices," I replied calmly. "You locked me out illegally. You falsely accused me of theft. What did you expect me to do?" "We were trying to help you," she insisted. "You're throwing away everything we built for you." "I'm building my own life," I corrected her. "One that makes me happy." My father finally spoke, his voice quiet. "We handled this badly. I know that. But your mother was just scared for your future, and that justified changing the locks? Making up stories about me stealing?" I asked. He had no answer for that. As we prepared to leave, I realized that regardless of the legal resolution, something fundamental had changed in our relationship. Trust had been broken in ways that might never be fully repaired. The next day, I returned to my parents' house with a neutral third party present to supervise as I retrieved my belongings. My mother hovered anxiously, occasionally objecting when I took certain items. "That lamp was a gift to the family, not just to you," she protested at one point. The mediator calmly intervened. "The agreement covers all personal belongings. Unless you have documentation showing this item is not his, he's entitled to take it." My father remained mostly silent, occasionally helping locate items when asked, but otherwise keeping his distance. I noticed him watching me with what seemed like sadness as I packed up childhood mementos and books. As I worked, I maintained emotional detachment, focusing on the practical task rather than the painful context. Still, discovering that some items were mysteriously missing or couldn't be found was frustrating. My complete portfolio of original artwork was nowhere to be found, though my mother claimed she had no idea where it might be. With the mediator's help, I documented all retrieved and missing items thoroughly. The financial settlement arrived promptly by wire transfer 3 days later, enabling me to secure a security deposit on a small apartment in Seattle. Uncle James helped me prepare for the cross-country move, even driving me to the airport and shipping some of my larger items to my new address. My new employers were remarkably understanding about the delayed start, even expressing admiration for my professionalism during a difficult personal situation. I found a perfect small apartment in Seattle's artistic district, close enough to walk to my new office. During my first week at the new job, I channeled all my emotional energy into creative work. My colleagues were welcoming, and the projects were exactly the kind of challenging design work I had always wanted to do. For the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The written apology from my parents arrived by certified mail 2 weeks after I moved. The language was formal and clearly drafted by their lawyer, acknowledging that accusations regarding missing items were made in error and termination of tenancy was not conducted in accordance with applicable laws. It wasn't a heartfelt apology, but it was documentation I might need if questions ever arose about the situation. After careful consideration, I decided to limit contact with my parents for the foreseeable future. I sent them an email establishing clear boundaries. Monthly check-in calls only. No surprise visits, and no discussions of my career choices or personal decisions. I explained that rebuilding trust would take time and would require respect for my autonomy. A month into my new life in Seattle, I received an unexpected message from my estranged sister through social media. Apparently, Uncle James had contacted her about my situation. That's onehuel.com. That's 26. You can re-8, N6. Well, and a 9. Well, N2. The same thing happened to me, she wrote. Different details, same control tactics. We scheduled a video call where she shared her own experiences with our parents and the freedom she had found by establishing firm boundaries. Our conversation was the beginning of a healing process I hadn't even realized I needed. For years, I had believed I was alone in my struggles with our parents, that perhaps I truly was ungrateful or difficult. Learning that my sister had faced similar challenges validated my experience in profound ways. 6 months after the lockout incident, I received my first promotion at the design firm. My work was being featured in the company's showcase portfolio, and I had developed friendships with several colleagues who shared my creative interests. I was building a new friend circle in Seattle, creating what felt like a chosen family based on mutual respect and shared values. As the holiday season approached, I faced complicated emotions about family traditions and connections. After discussing it with my sister, I decided to spend the holidays visiting her in Europe instead of returning home. The trip was both a symbolic break from old patterns and a chance to strengthen our reconnection. Throughout this period, I also began working with a professional counselor to process the family trauma I had experienced. Therapy helped me understand that my parents' behavior reflected their own issues and insecurities, not my worth or deserving. I learned to separate their expectations from my own authentic desires. Over time, my father began reaching out with occasional emails. Unlike my mother, he seemed to be making an effort to respect the boundaries I had established. Our exchanges were brief but civil, focusing on neutral topics rather than the past conflicts or my career choices. My mother, however, continued to struggle with the new dynamic. She would send long messages questioning my decisions or suggesting I was being influenced by negative people. Each time, I would calmly restate my boundaries and end the conversation if they weren't respected. Eventually, she began to understand that her old tactics no longer worked, though I sensed her acceptance was grudging rather than genuine. On the 1-year anniversary of the lockout, I took some time to reflect on everything that had happened. The experience, though painful, had forced a necessary independence that might have taken years to achieve otherwise. I had built a life based on my own values and talents, surrounded by people who supported my authentic self. I realized that healthy relationships require mutual respect and recognition of boundaries. My parents had never learned this fundamental truth, and their need for control had ultimately cost them a close relationship with both their children. Finding peace with my family's limitations wasn't easy, but it allowed me to focus on creating a fulfilling life, rather than seeking approval I might never receive. I had discovered strength I didn't know I possessed, and resilience that would serve me throughout my life. As I look toward the future now, I do so with confidence rather than fear. The painful break from my parents' expectations became the foundation for authentic independence and self-discovery. Sometimes the hardest moments in our lives become the catalyst for the most important growth. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your authentic path. Remember that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary for your well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage on your own path to establishing healthy relationships in your life.